All right, so now that we have our sketches, we have some ideas that we like. I'm going to choose the one that I like the most. So I really love this design. This one's really standing out to me. I think this could be a lot of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak it a little, bring it in to Illustrator. But before I do that, I always like to invert it, make it black and white, simplify everything, because when I'm bringing it into Illustrator, I don't want my lines to compete, because things can get a little tricky if you are working with multiple colors trying to do things. So I inverted it, then I brought it into Illustrator. Then the first thing I'm going to do, so this is going to be our sketch, right? So what we need to do is we need to lock this layer. We need to make sure also that we're always naming things. So that's our sketch. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw some lines. And I use the line tool. When I'm making guides, the main tools that I'm going to use are the line tool, the square tool, the circle tool. But for this one, I'm going to mostly use the line tool. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure everything is lined up nicely. Now I'm creating the width of each one of these. So what I'm doing is I made one, and then I'm going to use that same one that I just created and align it with these other angles of this logo. So then we have a consistent look. And also, as you see, it's not just the consistent width, but also the consistent angle. So as you see in the sketch, you start realizing like how much your angles and how much of this stuff that you were doing, which looked really good, when you boil it down into your guides, you realize, dang, this was so off. So that's why we do the guides. That's why we do this step of the process, to make things symmetrical, to make things even. And so everything has a very, very clean look to it. All right, so then the next step I'm going to do is we're going to try to actually make sure the center point is centered, because right now it's a little off. Oh yeah, there's a spot right there I missed, so let me fix that. So now we got all of our lines. So now let's get our center point and make sure that this is exactly where it needs to be, and it's pretty close. It looks pretty good. So let me just make a couple more adjustments here, and that's what this is about, just tweaking it. At this point, I'm really just using the arrow keys on my keyboard to make sure everything is aligned here. Now, as you see, that middle section is so off, like it's ridiculously off, but that's fine. That's cool, So we're just going to start working on that top section and getting it right. So obviously, look how far off it is. So let's bring that to center. And so this is where it should be. Right about there we go. This is where it should be. So now we have all of our lines. Now, as you see, that top section does have that curve. And also on kind of the tops of the crown, there's a curve too on like the two sides. So I'm going to get the circle tool, and I'm actually going to start figuring out the diameter and the width of each one of these. So I like to really get close when I'm doing curves, because curves can be tricky. So you want to make sure that these are going to be pretty symmetrical with each other. And you really have to take into account, since it is, two curves we're trying to measure, that they're going to be complementary. Now, I'm not going to get this perfect, and that's part of it. I'll get it to a good spot, and then I'll just tweak, So even here, I'm creating curves, but as you'll see later on, I actually don't really use the curves in the inside curves as much. So, but hey, that's part of the process, man. You just gotta go with it. You just gotta roll with the punches. So yeah, I love using these guides. I think guides is a great technique, and it doesn't matter what kind of logo you're doing, when you're making really complex shapes, or if you're doing really simplistic form, guides can just really take your designs to that next level. And because you really got to make sure these things, these logos, they're marks, they're meant to last, and a logo takes a lot of responsibility. If you think about it, it's really trying to communicate a business not only what is it that they do, but what they stand for and their ideals, and really how do they want to present themselves and what they want to be known for. So the logo has to be up to par with that. So that's why we always do these grids. We always make sure that everything is perfectly aligned, and before we start even drawing, before we start using that pen tool and start creating the actual shapes. So you see, I created the other spheres, and now I'm creating the interior curve of these lines. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger and fit it right there. Yep. So you just kind of have to tweak. And one thing I do, and I forgot to mention, is I do use Snap as far as like my guides and everything. So you can make sure your settings are set to Snap as well. And that will help you make sure things are aligned and make sure things are, connecting together. So that's basically the whole design, right? So everything looks really good. Everything looks really symmetrical. So now what we're going to do, we're just going to make sure that we're going to do the spaces, because we have all of the forms, but now we need to make sure the negative spaces are there too. We want the negative spaces to be the same width as our lines. So we'll just duplicate these. Yeah, that looks good. Everything is working. So here's how we make these into guides now. So you select all, you right click, and where's the thing? I just updated Adobe Illustrator, so I don't see it there. So let's go to view. Let's go to make guides. There it is. Well, bam. Now they're guides. So, and the guides are on their own layer. So we'll just name our layer to make sure we're being super organized here, because layers can get crazy. And that's it. So that's basically how we create guides. So I hope you enjoy that video. In the next video, I'm going to show you now how to vector this. See you there.